Hi, Carl.
Good evening. How's everybody tonight?
Thank you.
We will not be experiencing any virtual foot washing tonight. I'm not capable enough technologically, and I don't know if Zoom will.
I was trying to figure out if we were going to consider that and how.
So I'll wait just another few seconds, and then we'll get going. So everybody stay dry today, all that with the crazy rain this morning.
No, it's tonight.
So wonderful. Well, so good to see all of you again. Thank you for coming back. And yeah, just to pick up where Andy left off, but I'll rewind just a little bit. I think that'll be helpful to sort of remember where we were in our journey. We had basically ended with the Hosanna, blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. Two settings of Wilkes, or the settings of Wilkes and Gibbons. But I'll tell you, one of the tricky things with the Sunday of the Passion, Palm Sunday, is that the service completely flips on its head, because we start with the triumphant entry of Jesus and all of this, and by the end, we're having the Passion Gospel from one of the Synoptic Gospels, that is Matthew, Mark, or Luke, being read as the Gospel that day. And so we go from utter joy, Jesus is come, all is well, to, oh my gosh, what has happened here? But for our purposes in the class, I think we will sort of skip ahead and not cover the Passion on the Palm Sunday portion, but cover it sort of, dare I say, more in real time. So we'll go to Maundy Thursday, Good Friday, and so on. So are there any questions about anything that we've covered in the last few weeks before we dive in? Okay, well, let me share my screen, because Andy did such a wonderful talk about Palm Sunday and foot washing and all of that. And so actually, our first reading was about Jesus washing his disciples' feet. And I think we can probably omit that and move ahead. So let me share my screen with you, and there we go. So can you all see Jesus washes the disciples' feet?
Yes.
Excellent. So we'll skip that, and we'll skip a little bit further in the 13th chapter of John. And one interesting thing is that the Synoptic Gospels don't talk about the foot washing specifically. It's very interesting. And John doesn't really talk about the Last Supper. And actually in the prayer book, they gave an option either for the John reading or for Luke, which was talking about the Last Supper. But when the Revised Common Lectionary was adopted, they omitted the Last Supper option. And I think going with that Maundy, or commandment, a new commandment I give unto you. And that's what we'll read about. Would someone like to read John chapter 13, verses 31 to 35?
I can.
Thank you, George.
The new commandment. When Judas had gone out, Jesus said, "Now the Son of Man has been glorified, and God has been glorified in him. If God has been glorified in him, God will also glorify him in himself, and will glorify him at once. Little children, I am with you only a little longer. You will look for me, and as I said to the Jews, so now I say to you, where I am going, you cannot come. I give you a new commandment, that you love one another, just as I have loved you, and you should also love one another. By this, everyone will know that you are my disciples, if you have love for one another."
Thank you. Thank you. So, let me stop the share. So, sort of music might we have for this? Well, as I said earlier on, this is the idea of this is to complement some of the music that we will have liturgically. There's a wonderful setting of Thomas Tallis, "A new commandment give I unto you, saith the Lord." Hopefully, all things going well, no choir members getting COVID, anything like that. We'll have that on Maundy Thursday. A little nervous to say that. But therefore, because we're not having foot washing, there's a wonderful motet that's set on the antiphon for "At the Washing of Feet" by Maurice Duruflé, Ubi Caritas. Maurice Duruflé was a French composer, organist, studied at the Paris Conservatoire. He was the assistant to the organist Louis Vierne at Notre Dame. And actually, when Louis Vierne died, literally at the organ console, in the middle of a concert, and he sort of fell on the pedals, Duruflé was next to him and jumped on the bench and continued, so it wouldn't sound like there had been a mistake in the improvisation, which is really kind of crazy. Vierne actually then was taken across the street and died. But Duruflé was a wonderful teacher of harmony at the Paris Conservatoire, the organist at Saint-Étienne-du-Mont in Paris. It's up on a hill, kind of. It's a beautiful church, beautiful sort of stairways up to kind of a screen there. Though Duruflé was incredibly self-critical, highly critical of his works. And as a result, we have relatively few works from him. The Ubi Caritas is one of 4 Lenten motets that he wrote. He also wrote a wonderful setting of the Requiem, actually commissioned by the Vichy government, interestingly, in the Second World War. Beautiful piece that sets chant. Duruflé loved Gregorian chant. And so the Ubi Caritas is based upon the chant of the Ubi Caritas. Da 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 dum ba da da dee dee. You'll hear it. They'll sing it way better than I sing it. And so here is Ubi Caritas. It is sung by the Westminster Cathedral Choir, Martin Baker, the conductor.
This is true.
Wonderful. So what did you think of that? Good, bad? Did it capture the text? What did you think?
I thought it was beautiful.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Just close your eyes and listen.
Yeah. No. Anybody else? Oh, John, I think you're muted.
It really fit the text. A French composer with an English Catholic cathedral choir, not Anglican, but a Catholic cathedral in a beautiful Byzantine building, singing in Latin. Wonderful.
Yeah, no, wonderful. I agree, you know, and it's, I hate to say this kind of thing, but it's one of those, I would think it would be very difficult to be a composer and to set that text. Some have done it very successfully, as well. Paul Meier, who is a Scottish composer, did a setting of that for the wedding of William and Kate at Westminster Abbey. William and is he the Duke of Cambridge, Duke and Duchess of Cambridge, I think. Just a side note, if you're a church musician or composer and you have something played at something like that, you do generally sell quite a few copies, and usually it's quite a wonderful money maker for the royalty rights. So a sort of little side bonus for him, one of those sort of funny things. But so we have had our foot washing, and now let's go to the Lord's Supper. Now, before we get going, is there any other time that Jesus talked about bread or anything like this, or was this kind of a random, he was just kind of eating and looked at his hands and said, well, this, or any other times in the Gospels we hear about bread? Particularly maybe after a lot of people were fed, 5,000.
The loaves and the fishes.
Yeah, the 5.
Feeding the 10. Oh,
Yeah, go ahead.
feeding the 10,000.
Oh, the
5 loaves
5,000.
and 2 small fishes.
Yeah, the 5,000. Absolutely, absolutely. And then Jesus says after that, "I am the bread of life." And then there's a long discourse about this, and I'd like us to review that just a little bit. I mean, I know we probably all remember the Catholic hymn, and we won't be playing that tonight. But let's read from John, and I'll share my screen. Who would like to read?
I will.
Thank you, Diane.
Very truly, I tell you, whoever believes has eternal life. I am the bread of life. Your ancestors ate the manna in the wilderness and they died. This is the bread that comes down from heaven so that one may eat of it and not die. I am the living bread that came down from heaven. Whoever eats of this bread will live forever, and the bread that I will give for the life of the world is my flesh. The Jews then disputed among themselves, saying, how can this man give us his flesh to eat? So Jesus said to them, very truly, I tell you, unless you eat the flesh of the Son of Man and drink his blood, you will have no life in you. Those who eat my flesh and drink my blood have eternal life, and I will raise them up on the last day. For my flesh is true food, and my blood is true drink. Those who eat my flesh and drink my blood abide in me, and I in them. Just as the living Father sent me, I live because of the Father, so whoever eats me will live because of me. This is the bread that came down from heaven, not like that which your ancestors ate, and they died, but the one who eats this bread will live forever. He said these things while he was teaching in the synagogue at Capernaum.
Is this familiar to anyone, this reading?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, yeah. No, there's a time in the summer where there are a number of Sundays in a row that are about bread, and planning music is very challenging because there are only so many bread hymns that you can have, and particularly so you try not to repeat too frequently. So that's a bit of context, and then we go ahead to the institution of the Last Supper. And I chose the Matthew setting as much for its brevity as anything else. Would anybody like to read it? And if nobody does, I'll read it.
I can read it.
Oh, thank you, Diane.
Wait, I want to read it.
Oh, okay.
No, I'm just kidding.
We'll have an argument here. You go ahead.
All right. While they were eating, Jesus took a loaf of bread, and after blessing it, he broke it. He gave it to the disciples and said, "Take, eat. This is my body." Then he took a cup, and after giving thanks, he said to them, "Drink from it, all of you, for this is my blood of the covenant, which is poured out for many for the forgiveness of sins. I tell you, I will never again drink of this fruit of the wine until that day when I drink it new with you in my Father's kingdom."
So wonderful. So then, really, when we think of the Lord's Supper, not only are we commemorating, so we're commemorating the Last Supper, but what are we looking forward to anything? Hopefully, looking forward to anything, and that would be to the heavenly banquet, the heavenly feast, and taking with that. I'd like to play a piece for you I'm not playing it. I'd like for us to listen to a piece by the French composer Olivier Messiaen. This will be our first instrumental piece in the class. Messiaen, 1908 to 1992. So he was a contemporary of Duruflé. He was a student at the Paris Conservatoire, an organist at La Trinité, or Church of the Holy Trinity in Paris. Messiaen was somewhat unusual in that he was preoccupied with his faith, especially for a sort of esoteric, later serial type composer. And the scholar Jan Christiansen described how Messiaen accomplished sort of describing his faith in his music. Christiansen said, quote, "Messiaen's music is fundamentally determined with the preoccupation of translating into music the fusion of the divine and the human, of eternal and temporal." So a way to sort of accomplish this is Messiaen sort of had, if you really want to generalize, two sort of larger ways of describing spiritual things. And it wasn't just he sort of wrote a couple pieces for organ or something. Almost all of his musical composition is based in this way. He was fascinated by bird song and went into the woods and transcribed bird song. And he believed in sort of the music of the spheres, the moving of the inaudible music that the planets make as they move in orbit. All of these things praising God. Really, really a very deep spiritual person. He was also quite he was very forward-looking in terms of world music. He incorporated Hindu rhythms and Greek rhythms into his music, and a really unique tonal language. Some of that stuff's later on. The piece that we will listen to is actually his first composed piece. But going back to the two general stylistic tendencies, either it's exalted, dazzling music that's loud and faster tempi, really complex rhythm, or the opposite end of that, extremely slow tempos, soft dynamics, harmonic stasis, so very little harmonic movement, chord changes, that kind of thing, very gradual. So he's creating almost a silent, contemplative atmosphere to to bring to mind eternity and things to come. At the cathedral, I have played his apparition of the Eternal City, which is a great piece. I've played it a few times, and this piece is Le Banquet Céleste, or the Celestial Banquet, first published 1928. And at the top of the score is written John 6, chapter 6, verse 56, "Those who eat my flesh and blood and drink my blood abide in me, and I in them." So the piece is actually only 25 measures long, but it goes incredibly slowly. So just to give you a heads up, Messiaen heard things, timing was different for him. The organist Jean Longley went to go hear him, the great composer Messiaen, at La Trinité, and showed up at the church, and he heard someone playing the organ, and it was a Bach chorale playing ridiculously slowly. And Longley was very disappointed because he said, "Oh, this is terrible. I came over here and I'm hearing some student playing or something." And no, it was Messiaen, because he loved listening to the harmonies in very slow time. He had synesthesia, which means that you see colors when you hear different harmonies. It's a really cool thing. I should mention, for those people who have that, there's not consistency, so it's not like F sharp major is always a bright orange or something like that. It varies from person to person, but it sort of an incredible mixing of the senses. So I invite you to close your eyes and listen to this piece and contemplate the Celestial Banquet. Olivier Messiaen is the organist. So what did you think? Good, bad?
Oh, that was great. I like the way he built the intensity and all the resolutions, deceptive cadences.
Yeah.
Fabulous, wonderful.
Oh,
And this is he playing on a convical organ at Trinity? Do you know if that's a convical?
I think it's been rebuilt a number of times. There have been many hands in it, and so I don't think you could. It'd be a bit of a stretch, I think, to say that it is that anymore. But yeah, no, I believe he recorded that at his church.
Yeah, Eugene Gigoux has two convical organs at his church, but that was wonderful. Good selection. Fits the text.
Yeah. Anybody
That's
else?
something I did close my eyes as you suggested, and I saw colors. And I thought it
Oh,
was
excellent.
really cool. And I got to try it again.
Excellent.
Maybe,
Excellent.
yeah, it was really different. Thank you for suggesting shutting my eyes because it was just fun.
Yeah. No, it's a very neat piece, and it's Messiaen is one of those where it's sort of people love it or they hate it, and that's okay. I worked at a church as an associate organist where the organist described that piece as the world's longest organ piece. That's only 7.5 minutes long. But it's wonderful. It's a challenging piece to do liturgically because you really kind of need to have the whole amount of time to do it. And, with communion, you usually sort of stop before things are done. And with that one, you sort of need the whole thing. Great. So what happened now? So they had communion. Did they all just kind of go their separate ways, or what did they do? Does anybody remember? Something about a garden and praying and falling asleep. Anybody remember this? So,
Well, yeah, Jesus asked his disciples to pray with him, stay awake, and they couldn't do it. And, I think he got sort of disappointed in them, but and then at the end they came and got him.
exactly. That basically wonderfully summarizes Gethsemane. And so I would like to share with you, you remember Francis Poulenc from our first week? We had Timor et Tremor. Fear and trembling came over them. The first of his Lenten motets, and this one is Tristis est anima mea, which is based on the Gethsemane story. Let me share my screen with you. So here's the text. If you want to look at it just for a second, and then I'll play the music. So here's the music. So what did you think of that one? Obviously moved a bit quicker than the Messiaen did. How did you like that one?
Well, I liked it.
Yeah.
I thought it was contemplative.
It conveys the mood of the time.
Yeah, oh absolutely. I love the manner in which he sets I'll share the screen again to show the text. Then you will take flight. Vos fugam capatiet. Over and over, this beautiful, my soul is here, all of these things, and then quick movement, quick, and just as it was in the Timor et Tremor, talking about the drastic sort of mood changes that go along with each phrase. So in Poulenc's 4 Lenten motets, this is actually the 4th one of the set. The other we heard is the first, but we're doing them in liturgical order. And so the 4th one is for Maundy Thursday, so this is what we did for tonight. Now, does anyone have any questions before we return to the larger group? So we've covered Maundy Thursday. Now, what happens next? They have their garden party. There's a misunderstanding, or what is to come?
Yeah.
Good Friday.
Yeah.
The crowd will come and get him.
Yeah, absolutely. So in this piece, the mob has come. Judas has identified him, kissed him, even to identify him. And then he goes before Pilate. There's a trial, all of these things. So wonderful. Any other questions, comments, concerns? The music. Were you able to hear it okay this time? Was it okay tonight? Very audible, all that. Excellent.
It was excellent.
Excellent. Well, wonderful. Well, why don't we go ahead and join the other group then? So I'm going to close the room. So we're at a very logical stopping point. Oh, perfect.